Hello and welcome to Cornish Walking Trails today. We're in Mevagissey.
Same thing then.
So get your walking boots. In today's video,
I'm hanged the monkey. It's still here.
It must have stunk. So if that was an episode on CSI, they'd probably look into that today. Wouldn't they?
CSI Mevagissey. He drives down the quay and right off the end.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Goodness me.
Perils of YouTube. Can I tempt you with a story about a monkey?
Good morning everybody, we're in Mevagissey. In fact, we're staying in a holiday home. It's 9 Church Street, but that's a whole separate video that we'll be doing covering our 24-hour stay here in Mevagissey. If you want to find out what we got up to, I'll put a link to that video at the end of this one. Anyway, back to this one. We thought it'd be a great idea to take a look at Mevagissey in a nostalgic point of view. It wasn't until the early 20th century that there was actually a road built between St Austell and Mevagissey, giving access to the village. Until then it was pretty isolated and a community that did everything together, and other than a few ships that came in with supplies, they were pretty much self-sufficient. So there's some information that we're drawing from all of these books. They basically give you anecdotal history. In addition to that, we have our own book, which is Stockdale's Excursions in the County of Cornwall. Very old book, 200 years old that book, and extremely heavy. We'll be referring to that one later. And good old Roland Roddice. He visited lots of Cornish harbours in the 1950s and spoke to the folk that were around then. And it's a wonderful companion if you're visiting Cornish harbours. So let's give you an overview, a description of Mevagissey. It says this is a large fishing village with a good harbour enclosed by 2 short piers. The houses rise tier above tier, and from their facing of light grey slate have an appearance of newness. There is nothing in the place to attract the tourist. The ship inn, though small, may be trusted for a well-cooked steak and clean bed. Now that was written for the tourist in 1895. That's quite curious, isn't it? That there was no tourism here in 1895.
Nothing here for the tourists.
It's totally different today.
Yeah, well you wouldn't say that now, would you? So,
no. So you've got some fishing craft still here, haven't you? But there's lots of vessels that will take you out on day trips along the coast. A lot of the cottages are now holiday homes, and there's businesses offering ice cream and evening meals, fish and chips, all that sort of thing. Total contrast.
Yeah, I mean, it's that quintessential Cornish fishing harbour village on the south coast of Cornwall, isn't it? It's still here.
It is.
The ship in. You seen that?
Oh yeah.
Love that.
Very apt, and I like the porthole windows. Don't you? We are so tight against this wall, aren't we, because of the traffic. Oh, you nearly had my toes.
Good, you've been walking.
It's one of the characteristics of Mevagissey, isn't it? The really narrow, tight, tiny streets.
So our walk starts here at the ship.
Yes.
So we're going to go down 4th Street.
Yes.
So we're coming out the ship, turning right, and then we're taking the first left down one of the little alleyways down to the harbour.
Every time it's my day off, it's not sailing.
I love Mevagissey, and so did Roland Roddice. He said, and so to Mevagissey, which let me admit right away is my idea of heaven. It's an honest-to-goodness fishing village with its picturesque harbour full of boats and its higgledy-piggledy houses pressing close to the water's edge. I was once told that a fisherman likes to live in a house where he can toss a biscuit into the sea from his window. There are many such houses in Mevagissey, where the buildings crowd one on top of another, all at different angles on the steep slopes above the harbour. So it seems as though a good push against one of the higher ones would tumble the rest into the water. I adore that description, and it does look like that, don't you think?
It does, doesn't it?
They're like dominoes lined up, and just one shove, and they'd all come tumbling down.
love that description.
It's exquisite, isn't it?
What a waste of a biscuit though. What type of biscuit are we talking about? A hobnob?
I've lived in Cornwall all my life, I've never heard that. So,
No.
you know, we learn something every day, don't we? That's what's so special about reading from these old books sometimes, isn't it? So there's the fish market, and that's a modern day fish market. I wonder, Andrew, do you know if that's where they had the original fish market?
I don't know, but it would make sense because obviously this part was the oldest part of the harbour, the inner harbour. So probably.
Yeah.
I think it's lovely. There's still fish in here.
I do too.
Yeah, and I was up really early this morning. I caught the fishermen going out, and it was magical. It was really special.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a good place to do this actually. Do you know what a Mevagissey Duck is?
No.
Let me enlighten you. So it says here that before the advancement of agricultural methods made it possible for farmers to store summer crops to create cattle fodder to keep their livestock in good condition all year round, salted fish was the staple winter diet around these parts. In days of yore, when the signs were netting vast quantity of pilchards, Mevagissey enjoyed the distinction of being a leading supplier. The fish were salted, packed into casks and exported to the Catholic countries of the Mediterranean and far beyond. This economic and nutritious product found a ready market with the Admiralty's victualling yards and came to be nicknamed the Mevagissey Duck by the Jolly Jack tars, which may or may not have been intended as a compliment.
So it's not a duck at all?
No, it's pilchard.
Salted pilchard?
Yeah, and pilchards now are more commonly known as sardines.
Yeah, they've been rebranded, haven't they? But
yeah.
we used to catch them by the million in Cornwall, didn't we?
Yeah, and I think it was fished out from these waters effectively because they used to chase them in the late summer.
Yes.
They would sort of come into view sort of off Land's End, and then they would chase them up both sides of the coast.
And that's what the hewers' hats were for.
Yeah.
The cry would go out, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Heaver, heaver. And they all scramble to go and catch these fish.
Yeah.
Something incredibly restful and serene about watching boats just bobbing along on the water and the gentle ripple in a very protected harbour. It feels very safe in some senses. I just love watching, and the guys over there are now putting a boat into the water. Everybody is the same, they're all stopping to watch. Okay, so this book is written 55 years after that first introduction that we talked about, and it shows that there is now tourism going on in Mevagissey. And it says here he stayed and he had the most wonderful experience. But it isn't Mevagissey village that I find so fascinating, though to be sure that it is picturesque enough. It is the harbour. Imagine an evening in June with a few patches of very high cloud in an azure sky. Imagine a faint breeze coming in with the tide. Shrill cries from the ever-hungry, ever-circling gulls. Solid granite quays enfolding an inner and outer harbour where some dozen fishing boats lie peacefully at anchor. Soft colours and the gentle lapping of waves. Such was Mevagissey Harbour when I first saw it. Some people don't believe in love at first sight, but I know better. So he was absolutely mesmerised by this place. He went on to talk to some of the local fishermen to find out what they thought. They were kind of sad that the fishing industry was dying out and tourism was taking over. And one of the old boys that he got talking to said, Mevagissey is changing. When I first came here, fishing was everything. Each cottage used to have its own hand press for the pilchards. But now, there's nothing like fishing there used to be. Mevagissey is becoming a holiday resort. But mind you, we added, we haven't yet come down to catering for trippers like Paul Perrow. So he's quite scathing about Paul Perrow giving day trips on fishing boats, which I think is quite funny because they do that here now. Today, tourism and fishing go hand in hand. On the quayside, the fish grill prepares fish landed here at Mevagissey. And when would these have been caught then? Are they fresh in today?
Last night.
Oh, lovely. You've been doing that a while, haven't you?
Pardon? Have I been doing it a while?
Yeah.
The mackerel frames go for conger baits.
Can you do that?
Okay. And the belly flaps, these little bits are salt for whiting baits.
Oh, okay, so go full cycle.
Full cycle, nothing at all is wasted.
Beautiful fish. Oh, thank you very much.
Alright.
That's really interesting. So they are still catching
It's lovely to
pilchards
see, isn't
here,
it?
calling them sardines.
Yeah, I didn't know they were
Sea
still
bass.
catching them. Yeah.
Anchovies,
Yeah.
mackerel. Wow, quite a variety of fish being caught here.
He said sole as well, didn't he?
Yeah. Huh. Actually, that's far better than I thought, because we were getting the impression, weren't we, that the fishing was dying out further down west.
Yes.
They couldn't get new people to come in and do it.
Yeah, it's lovely to see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
Support your local fish industry.
Yeah.
Buy local, buy fish. It's good for you.
Yeah. So we've just moved around the harbour a bit to She Sells. It's kind of difficult to say. And there is a really old photograph of men sat on a bench here, and there's a wonderful story that tells you what was going on in that photograph.
So this is taken from this book.
Yes.
It's by Liz Hurley,
Who
Cornish
actually
author.
owns the bookshop
She
over
does,
the way.
Yes.
Yes.
This area was where all the local fishermen used to come and congregate, tell stories. Just find out what all the gossip was, really. But it says in here, so this is taken I think from an older book, it says, in front of our house, now She Sells,
Yeah.
was a low bench seat where all the old retired fishermen sat to smoke and chat, reminiscing about their seafaring days and pointing out where the young ones were going wrong.
As you do.
It was known as Mevagissey Parliament. The seat was continuous and went right across a small doorway into my grandfather's workshop. One had to step over it to gain entry. My father bought a motorcycle and wanted to house it there, so my grandfather made a flap in the seat.
Oh, okay, so
Right.
it tilt up and down.
Yeah, unfortunately the old men and the Harbour Trust objected and took him to court. F.E. Hunkin was the clerk at the time. Judge Rawlins was obviously amused by the case, as he said that he wasn't sure how the Parliament was formed, whether by verbosity or force of arms. However, he ruled that whenever access was needed, Parliament must rise.
Oh, very good. Oh, I do like
that, isn't
yeah.
Parliament must rise.
Off we go then. So what's our plan now?
But we're going to carry on walking down now past the harbour office.
Yeah.
And we're going to go down to the outer harbour walk.
Brilliant.
I've got another story to tell you there. Just thinking about that though, those seats where the old fishermen would have congregated. I wonder
Yeah.
what they would make of all this now.
Oh, yeah, it's a good point actually. There's a couple of boats coming there now, isn't there? One was obviously got some tourists on. Have been out for a day trip.
Definitely a fishing boat,
Yeah.
isn't it? And yeah, it's got tourists on.
Yes. Now
So-
this one is called Coastal Cruise, so that must be in the same line of business these days.
So, depending on what time we've got, because our time is a bit limited here today, we may possibly go out on a short cruise later
Yeah,
on.
see, I would really enjoy that.
Yeah, I would too.
So I can understand why there must be a bit of tension between those that have continued to fish
Yeah.
and those that fish tourists.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a good way of putting it, isn't it?
So our next story is about the outer harbour and the piers that were put in, and they were completed in the late 19th century. In 1891 there was a huge storm, and in this book it gives us a bit more detail. It says during a rare blizzard in 1891 the recently built pier was devastated, with huge trunks being completely washed away. Indeed, this blizzard was remarkable. For 5 days it battered the south of England. Large areas of Cornwall were left under snowdrifts between 8 and 15 feet high. Villages were cut off for weeks, ships were thrown into the rocks, and much property was destroyed. The pier was rebuilt, and by 1895 the lighthouse was one of the first in the country to be powered by electricity, which is on the other side there.
Are you enjoying our walk so far?
I am.
I'm not talking to you, I'm talking about you at home.
Oh.
If you are, and give us a like. Helps with the algorithm on YouTube, helps our videos go out to more people so more people find out about our channel. If you're really enjoying our channel, you enjoy walking around Cornwall, consider subscribing. It's free on YouTube. Videos usually every Friday.
Right, so we've explored the outer harbour. Where are we going now?
I am going to take you to Sunnyside.
Sunnyside?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Follow me.
Oh,
Back down that way.
you're following me.
Oh yeah.
And these cottages are just so higgledy-piggledy. They do exemplify what we've been talking about, don't they?
You like these ones, don't you?
I do. They're built on the cliff. Look, this is the actual cliff face. And they're built on it. Never happened today.
So, are you enjoying the sunny weather?
Yeah, I was just thinking I'm getting a bit warm.
So this is called Sunnyside.
Oh. Why?
There's a bug. Do you want to find out?
So, Sunnyside.
This is Sunnyside and quite apt.
It's very warm up
very
here.
Warm, isn't it? So, Sunnyside, it says here, this is a nice book by the way.
Yeah.
This one here. It's called Chili Ali Op.
The Story of Mevagissey by T.J. Walter.
I read it last night, very good.
Yes.
Anyway, it says in here, it says local people will tell you there are two sides to the village. Looking towards the sea on the left is Sunnyside, where the small cottages of the fishermen are to be found. And on the right is Moneyside, where the more generously proportioned homes once occupied by ships, captains and merchants rise up the hill.
I like that.
Yes,
Sunny
doesn't
and
it?
money.
It says on Sunnyside the cottages sit higgledy-piggledy in tiers one above the other. In fact, they are built so close to each other that many overlap. In Cliff Street, one of the homes has its front door on the roof. The street itself is so narrow that motor vehicles cannot reach the top.
Wow.
Sort of going back away from the harbour now, down towards the Fountain Inn.
Okay.
One of the old, I think it might be the oldest inn still open in Mevagissey.
Okay.
We can have a look in a minute anyway. But on the way down, I'll just read this.
Yeah.
It says that over the centuries, it's been suggested by those of a puritanical persuasion that Mevagissey is a fishing village blighted by drinking.
Oh, okay.
Some of the fishermen, however, who risk their lives to bring in the catch, are of a different persuasion. They suggest it is a drinking village blighted by fishing. I like that.
Oh, that's very good. So the book tells us that in the Napoleonic Wars, that era, they were very keen for people to join the Navy, and you've probably heard of the press gangs at the time. Fishermen were meant to be exempt, but there is a story in this book, and it says, the story is told even today of the fishermen who frequented the Fountain Inn at the time. As the press gangs entered through the front door, those who were fleet of foot and not too deep in their cups disappeared through the back one. Once up the hill, and in amongst the fishermen's cottages there were hundreds of hiding places. Not least of these were the cellars found beneath most of the homes and used to salt away fish needed to feed the families through the winter. So they went into the fish cellars beneath the cottages and hid from the press gangs. Brilliant story, isn't it?
On your head.
I know.
So a walk does actually take us this way.
Okay.
It's not quite open yet.
No.
Just before lunchtime, isn't it?
Where are we?
So our walk's taking us down here now.
Oh, okay. So number 7 back there is
Yes.
where Jack Dunn, who wrote this book, I'll put it on screen now.
Yeah, Mevagissey Memories it's called.
He wrote that book and he grew up there.
He did, yeah, he was born in 1909.
And his mum had a shop
She did, yeah.
in the downstairs.
Yeah, it's like a grocer's shop as far as I can
Aw.
remember.
That's wonderful.
From the book, I mean, I obviously wasn't read in 1909, but...
Yeah. What you remember reading.
We got a lovely story from a book a bit later on when we come back down and investigate the other side of the harbour.
It's hilarious. It'll make you giggle. Reading from this book, it said that in Mevagissey there was a choice of denominations, and it says a directory in 1889 gives an indication of the wide spectrum of religious ideals towards the end of the 19th century, with chapels for congregation. I can't say it. Put my teeth in. No, I can't say it.
Congregations?
I
Can't say either.
Congregationalists. Yes. Shouldn't have had that cider at lunchtime. Wesleyans, Bible Christians and Free Methodists. So there's a whole wide spectrum of people and the way that they used to worship in Mevagissey. And it says for the next 50 years or so, much of the social life revolved around the church and chapel. So we're here in Chapel Street, and this building is St Andrew's Methodist Church. Congregationalists. Got it then. Bible Christian chapel there, isn't there?
Yeah.
So next on our list is a car park, but no horror stories today. It's actually a lovely story to do with Willow car park at the entrance to Mevagissey. So let's go and find the car park and we'll tell you this lovely story.
So this is the main car park in Mevagissey. It's called the Willow car park. I mean, it's 2023. I'd like to say at the moment the car park is excellent. It's manned, which is unusual.
It's run by family, isn't it?
Yeah, and
it's
it's
not AMPR.
Reasonable prices.
It's an easy to use, friendly car park. But that isn't why we're here.
No,
is it?
the reason we're here, it's called the Willow car park, and that is a willow tree.
Yes.
Okay, now that in its own isn't unique because obviously it's been named Willow car park.
Yeah.
But at one point this was all full of willows. It used to follow the bank of the river, and they used to use the withies from the willows. And do you know what they used them for?
I think I can guess. Can I take a guess?
Go for it.
Is it to do with the fishing industry?
It is.
Is it to do with the lobster pots?
It is.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
they used to
So
make the
weave
lobster pots. Yeah.
Oh, fair
Yeah.
enough.
Yeah.
Ah, so all the willows are gone now. We've got a car park.
We have. So once again, they've gone from being used in the fishing industry to this land being used for the tourism industry.
Fishing for tourists again.
We are.
It's a real nostalgic trip through Mevagissey, isn't it? What's next?
I want to show you a sign.
Oh, okay.
So back at the car park again,
Yeah,
and we're basically heading out onto the main
out
road.
of Mevagissey.
So the sign I wanted to show you, Sarah, is just ahead of us, just walking towards it. It's the main Mevagissey sign that you see when you enter the village.
Yes, the old-fashioned one.
It is, and it's actually got two different images on each side.
Okay.
And there's something really quite interesting about the images.
Okay.
Have a little look and see what you can see.
See if it tells me anything.
Yeah.
I'm up for that.
Good.
So Andrew laid down a gauntlet to see if I could see any difference in the two sides of that sign. Well, there's two dates, 1790 and 1890, so obviously 100 years apart.
Yeah.
And it looks to me as if the older one is suggesting there was two communities, St Meva and St Izzy, and they were both smuggling.
Yeah.
And then 100 years later, maybe the communities come together to form Mevagissey, and they look as though they're fishing instead.
Yeah, I pretty much go along with that. I don't know whether it was two communities, but I think I think the name of Mevagissey is derived from two saints, Saint Meva, Saint Izzy. I think that was what they're going to have. But you are right there. There was one was 1790 and the other one was 1890. One shows a smuggling scene, which would have been going on at that period of time. 100 years later, it was more to do with the pilchard industry.
So we're going to go and pick up that smuggling story at the church now, aren't we?
We are.
So to my way of thinking, that tower doesn't look like a traditional church tower.
It doesn't, does it?
No.
You're right.
So this is the Anglican Church of St Peter, and as you've already seen, it doesn't really have a proper traditional church tower. And this book tells us why. When Cromwell defeated Charles I, local Puritans came to the fore in Mevagissey, they decided that the church was too ornate. So they stripped it of decoration and decided to demolish the tower. To fund the demolition, they sold the church bells to a Quaker foundry in Snorstall. But goes on to say, I'm told that the local smugglers weren't happy when the tower was torn down. On dark nights when small boats were bringing in casks of spirits, tobacco and tea ashore, a lantern would be lit in the tower to warn them if the excise men were about. In order to keep them safe, the smugglers safe, they lit a lantern up there to say, oh, excise men abroad, so they'd go back out to sea until it was safe to come ashore. But taking down the tower, of course, the smugglers could no longer reliably come ashore, and that must have affected the trade here.
This book, Sarah, next year, it's going to be 200 years old.
Yeah,
Yeah, this was written in 1824.
I know.
It's called Excursions in the County of Cornwall.
Yes.
And it's by a gentleman called F. Stockdale. It's a beautiful book. And there's lots of engravings as we go through. Very
Oh,
fine
yeah.
ones.
Look at
Hayes
that.
Castle, for example.
It's beautiful.
So he went on a tour of the county and he came to Mevagissey, and he says here that the church is a small edifice standing at the north-east entrance of the town, but the tower has not been rebuilt since it fell down a few years since.
Oh,
So that's interesting. So
Yeah.
he's saying it fell down and it was a few years before, whereas the other book suggests it was quite a long time before and it was deliberately taken down.
oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, and if you know,
Yeah,
let us
put it
know.
in the
Put it in the
comments.
comments. Love to find out. And it goes on to say that the interior contains a handsome monument with effigies of the deceased erected to the memory of Otwell Hill and his wife, and it says who died in 1614.
Oh my
It's
goodness.
quite a curious thing. So it's inside. So I'm assuming the church is open. So
Looks
should we go in
open.
and have a little look?
Yeah,
Come
come
on.
on then. So, what are we looking for? Is it that up there by the altar? Yes. Oh my goodness me. Wow. Goodness me. So I can't say that she looks like she's that comfortable. And if she's been lying like that now for over 300 years, goodness me. Oh, look, she's got a little doggy at her feet. The kind of notation above on that beautiful engraving is taken down and written, and it's a little bit easier to read from the book, although it's still quite tricky because it's worded in a poem using language from 400 years ago, not 300 as I said earlier. And anyway, it says, Stock, Lancashire, birth, London, Cornwall gave to Otwell Hill inheritance and grave. Frank, frugal, pleasant, sober, stout and kind, of words true, just indeed, men him did find. 2 reigns he served of justice of the peace, beloved he lived and godly did decease. Mary his wife, to overlive him, something, I can't quite make that out, I think loath. This monument hath raised to them both. So basically he's from Lancashire, born in London, and he came to Cornwall because he got an inheritance. And his character seems to have been very pleasant and reliable, and in God he did die, and he was a justice of the peace for a while. That's how I read that anyway. Isn't that fantastic? He must have been quite a well-respected gentleman to have had such a wonderful, is it an effigy? I can't remember what they're called.
Well, memorial, isn't it?
Memorial.
I'm going to
that's
come in
better.
because I've got 2 more bits of information which I don't think you know about, which I think are quite interesting. So, I don't know if I'm in shot here. Yeah, I don't normally do this. So, he died by falling off his horse.
Oh, poor man.
Yeah.
Okay.
And his wife
Yeah.
remarried within 2 months of his decease.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if that was an episode on CSI, they'd probably look into that today. Wouldn't they?
CSI Mevagissey.
So he died falling off his horse.
Yeah.
And then she married two months later. Well, she must have had somebody lined up.
I think she might have done.
Oh wow, what a story.
Yeah.
Oh, and he seems like such a nice man.
Well, we didn't know him.
No, that's true. And people always say nice things after you're dead, don't they?
Do you like that?
I do like that. Brilliant. Love that story. Let me see. My checklist. Phone, camera. Phone.
So we're heading back down to the harbour next.
Okay.
So do a few jump cuts and pick us up down at the harbour.
Come on, man. I like that story.
What I find incredible though is that chap Stockdale wrote that book nearly 200 years ago.
Yeah.
And he came to this church which was in a fairly ruinous state because the tower had been taken down, been removed. He talks about it being almost ruinous. And that was still there on the wall and it survived. And it pretty much probably looks the same as it was when he looked at that and he wrote that book.
Gosh, that's a good point actually. So we're 400 years after that. He was 200 years ago.
I wonder back, if they had YouTube 200 years ago, do you think he would have been on YouTube?
Yeah, those books are the stock of YouTube back then, aren't they? They are the fodder of YouTube.
Perils of YouTube. I left my hat back in the church. Hopefully it's still there.
For full details of this walk, we'll pop it all onto Patreon for you. We have a Patreon page. If you go to patreon.com and look for Cornish walking trails, there's several homemade walks on there now. Some are in really popular places like Hale and the Lizard, and then there's some more obscure places that we've taken you to as well. So you might want to go over there and check it out. So we've noticed on the narrow streets there's these lumps of, I guess they would have been granite. And we're wondering if they were just to push the cartwheels into the middle of the road. If that was the case, do let us know in the comments because they're quite fascinating. It's like as if they're pushing people away from the house.
Can I tempt you with a story about a monkey?
What, the monkey at Mevagissey?
The monkey at Mevagissey.
Go on then.
Okay, let's go over here and I'll read it to you. You're going to like this. Back to this lovely book again.
Yes.
And this story is about a monkey.
Right.
It's actually been in a few of the books that I've read, but I quite like the way this one's written.
Fair enough.
Okay. So, there is a story dating back to the Napoleonic Wars.
Yeah.
Okay? A French ship is said to have been wrecked off the coast. The only survivor was a monkey that floated ashore on some wreckage. Not surprisingly, the poor creature was in an excited state and gave vent to squeals and gibberish. The local fishermen are said to have mistaken the gibberish for French and hanged the monkey, fearing it might be a spy. So I like that story. So the author of this book goes on to say that having heard this story told in other fishing villages along the coast, I have my doubts as to its veracity, particularly as the Mevagissey men had been trading with the French for years before that incident and many spoke the language, which is fair comment.
Yeah.
But I was doing a bit of research and I think it's in Hartlepool.
Okay.
Might have it wrong now.
Yeah.
But there is a true story about that did happen in Hartlepool. And there is a phrase called the monkey hanger.
Oh,
I don't know if you've heard of that. Yeah, and apparently what this was, it was a mascot on a ship.
Yeah.
So the French sailors would quite often take a monkey on board and they would dress them in a French uniform. And basically it was like a lucky emblem on the ship. So I suppose if it had wrecked and this monkey was able to get ashore, he would have been in a French uniform.
Oh, I see. So that's why they thought he was a French spy.
Yeah.
But
so
why
if
would
it
they
is
think
true,
he's speaking French? That is bizarre. An excited monkey. Oh, poor monkey. That is an extraordinary story. I love that story too. We've got so many stories today and I've loved I've loved them all actually.
So I'm saving our best 3 stories for last, Sarah. That's the first one.
Okay.
Can we beat that?
So that's number 3.
That's number 3.
Then we've got the penultimate one.
Yes.
And you're saving the best till last.
I am.
Wow. can only go upwards from here, and we've done pretty well already. Earlier we were talking about the 1891 store, and this one's actually got a plaque saying Victoria Pier was restored in 1897. Do you think we're at the wrong side?
Yeah.
So just in case, apologies.
It would probably
I
make
doubt
sense
it would have
because this is
happened
the
on one
side that
side.
probably got the worst of the
Brunt
weather.
of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, possibly.
I've told people that these last few stories are really good. Don't let me down.
No pressure on delivering them then. So years ago, the sanitation in the houses in Mevagissey was poor. There was no main sewerage, if you like. And what they used to do was collect the night soil through a system of terracotta pipes that used to fall from the top of the cliff down to the quayside. And there were some innocuous looking receptacles that used to sit, and regularly they were emptied. One day, let me read it to you, this is so funny. This is Jack Dunn, he grew up in Mevagissey, and he tells this story. He says, I can well remember some visitors spreading their tablecloth on one of these receptacles in preparation for a picnic, until the harbour master enlightened them and sent them off in their way in a near panic. So can you imagine, they were laying out their picnic on one of these receptacles and it was full of night soil. Could eat their sandwiches. Must have been stinking, mustn't it?
So no sense of smell.
I know.
Oh, God. So interestingly, Mevagissey was one of the very first places, I think it was the first place in Cornwall in 1895, I think it was, to get electricity.
Yeah.
They had it around the harbour here. It was actually for the lighthouse, but there was enough surplus that they were able to light around the harbour.
And the village, wasn't it?
Yeah, in the village. But it didn't get any mains water connection until I think as late as the 1950s.
Yeah, so like 50, 60 years later they actually got running water in the house.
And a lot of these books do comment on the smell, the Mevagissey smell. It stank apparently.
Yeah, so one of the stories we've read is that they had like in their loft a tank to have water in,
To collect
didn't they?
rainwater, wasn't it?
And
Yeah.
they used to run dry in the summer, so there was no means of flushing anything through. So you can imagine the combination of fish, fish guts, and sanitation, night soil. It must have stunk.
Can you imagine you come on your holiday for the first time to Cornwall, you end up in Mevagissey at that time. You think, what? Where am I? This place stinks.
Not a good advert for Cornwall, is it?
It has got better over the years.
Oh, it's nice now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's perfect. Oh, are you in your way?
Done that before.
Yeah, he just strolls through.
Right, we're nearly at the end of our walk, Sarah.
Good, 'cause I'm nearly out of
We do
water.
need to go to the end, to the lighthouse,
Okay,
for the final story.
come us on then. And finally,
And finally, we're at the end of our walk.
yes,
Have you enjoyed it today?
I have.
Good,
Yes,
isn't it? Have you learned a
yeah.
bit about Mevagissey?
Loads.
Our final story takes place here, at the end of Lighthouse Pier. 1953.
Okay,
Have you heard of the film Never Let Me Go?
can't say I have.
Starred Clark Gable.
Okay,
Okay, I didn't know about this either until we stayed at the property.
yes.
We're actually filming
It's
another
a
vlog
separate
about it.
video.
But on the wall there, they've got a big poster in their lounge, and it's a wonderful poster. Anyway, 1953, the film, Never Let Me Go, was filmed here in Mevagissey. This was before CGI and things like that, but there's a chase scene in it, and if we can get some footage of it, we'll try and include a little bit of it now whilst I'm talking. But basically, he's driving a car, he comes down Polkert Hill, which is that
Yep.
steep hill, he turns onto the quay, he's being chased, it's a wartime drama, it was a film,
Yeah.
isn't it? He's being chased, he drives down the quay, and right off the end. It's incredible.
Are they?
Yeah, how they filmed it, I don't know. But they filmed it, went over, and then it cuts to them in the harbour here,
Yeah.
being pursued.
And it's definitely this lighthouse. That lighthouse
It
is behind them.
It is.
Yeah, we watched it last night.
It's
didn't we?
incredible.
I can't
Absolutely
believe
incredible.
it.
Now, I found out this morning
Yeah.
that the first time they did the take of that, there's a guy, he was a stunt driver driving the car, and the car actually rolled. Yeah,
Oh,
and he
no.
almost got trapped in the car and he had to get out really quick.
Oh,
He
crumbs.
survived,
Yeah.
he was okay, and then he had to redo it again because they didn't have the scene done correctly. So if you notice, the actual one that appears in the film, it goes off perfectly and lands
Yes.
perfectly.
Yeah.
But yeah, they actually did that, and it's quite incredible.
I wouldn't want to drive off the end there, would you? Bonkers. And what happened to the cod? Did they fish it out again?
Well, I wondered that as well.
Does anybody know?
I'd love to know.
I would too. Is it still down there somewhere?
But
Is it two
there might
cars?
be 2 cars, yeah. Right, 2 cars. Anyway, that's the end of our
incredible.
walk today. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah.
I think, whilst we're talking about films, we'll call it a wrap.
Yes, that's very good. I'm incredibly hot. I'm going to go and get an ice cream and dodge the seagulls. But I've really enjoyed today. If you've enjoyed today, don't forget to subscribe, give us a like, and if you're interested in the walk details, hop over to Patreon. They'll be there, if not already, very shortly.
Yeah, and if you've been to Mevagissey before, maybe on a holiday, or perhaps you're local to the area and you've been before, if there's anything else you can sort of add to our video, if there's any comments you've got. I know people like to read the comments.
Yeah.
It's always a nice thing to do,
Especially
isn't it?
when it adds to the video.
If you've got special memories of Mevagissey, pop it in the comments.
Yeah.
We'd love to read it and find out.
We do read them, and we'll try and answer you. Alright, until next time.
Bye!
Bye!